Here we go. And we want to know who's in the house. So please add your name, county office, district, or school in the chat box located on your Zoom toolbar. So we'll take a few moments to do that. And as you are entering, look and see who else is in the room with us. Of course, you can always go to see who's in on the call by looking at the participants. So we have 31 on the call right now. And great to see you. Gina Smith and Deborah Bruns, great. Nice to see you, Lisa Bowman. It's so nice to see familiar names. Great. Okay, Nikari, nice to see you too. Okay, so next slide. You think we've had enough time? People are still signing in. So welcome, I'm Fred Cochran from San Joaquin County Office of Education. And I had the privilege of kind of co-facilitating with three marvelous, wonderful people, Rhonda Marriott and Pam Tuppy from Orange County Department of Ed. And my friend James McKenna from LACO is also with us today. And we're excited to welcome you here and share and have a great experience today. So let's get started. So,
all right, there we go. That was not advancing. So our outcomes for the network, if you're new, we have two that we focus on that we developed in April of 2018 when we first came together as a statewide group. The first goal is really just to share best practices amongst our schools, districts, and county offices. And then our second outcome is to capitalize on our expertise to support our implementation efforts moving forward. So our agenda today is we're going to actually hear from a school district in Orange County, Westminster School District. So we get a voice from the field about implementation and some of the successes and barriers they might have faced as they have looked at implementing UDL. We're also going to be looking at teacher data and trying to get a big picture of what implementation barriers are at different levels that we're facing in the classroom. And then we'll be closing by looking at resources and upcoming events. So just to remind you of our meeting norms, please mute your device on your Zoom toolbar. I'm sure most of us are familiar with Zoom at this point. You can ask any comments or make any comments or ask any questions using our chat feature during the Zoom call. We've got Fred's going to be monitoring chat. I'm kind of moving the slides here and there. You're going to see Rhonda and James present today. So all four of us are kind of working in tandem today. If you are joining the call with someone in the same room, this used to be an issue pre-COVID, but now most of us are in totally separate places. But if you happen to be joining with somebody that's in the same room, make sure you use one device to avoid any frequency issues. And we will be recording our call today so that if you miss any part of it or have to step away, you can go back to it. And that's going to be in our Google folder, which Rhonda's going to talk about.
Thank you, Pam. Yes, so all of our resources for the California UDL Network are located in this shared folder. So you can see the shortened URL there on the slide. And Pam is navigating over to that shared folder where you can see everything is grouped in separate subfolders, so you could find any of the previous presentations. All of our recordings from our UDL Network meetings are placed in there, as well as the slides. Any resources that we share and we talk about are also located in there. And probably one of the most important items is that California UDL Network resource document, so you'd want to make sure you're checking that out. And usually it will list the dates for the year's UDL Network meetings. We are still working on determining the dates for the 2020-2021 school year. So we will be sending out that information as soon as those dates are finalized. So look forward to that information.
Hey, Rhonda, could you go back to the slide with the link? A few people couldn't get the link down in time.
Yeah, I think
There we
Pam's
go.
taking, there you go. Pam's taking us back to that slide. So you can see that shortened URL there again.
I also posted it in the chat. It's not the shortened URL, but it's the link to the drive. It's just the long one, but you can click on that too. So if for some reason it's not working, if one of my colleagues can just paste that in there, that would be awesome. Okay. So yeah, if you are not able to access it for any reason, go ahead and just make a note of that in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and advance the slides. We're going to hear in just a minute from Westminster School District from two of our colleagues here in Orange County. We have Lori Hernandez, who's the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, and we have Tricia Urbaniak, who is the Executive Director of Accountability, Assessment, and School Climate and Prevention. And the two of them have kind of been like a dynamo team working with their Assistant Superintendent, Merlene Pierce, that they've really looked at how are we taking this initiative and how are we building capacity? How are we working with site teams? So Lori, you are a co-host, so you can actually start sharing your screen. Lori, are you sharing or is Tricia gonna share her screen?
Tricia's gonna share her screen.
Okay, so I need to try and find her really quickly here there she is, great. Okay, so Tricia, you are gonna be a co-host now. Do you see the?
Alrighty.
Perfect. I'm going to stop share so that you can go ahead and share.
All right, thanks. So good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's my pleasure and Lori and I's pleasure to be able to share some information about Westminster School District's version with you. I'm just going to get started real quick to set the table. I've been the MTSS coordinator overall, so I'm going to give a bigger picture about MTSS and how we landed on seeing that UDL was a priority in our district and what some of our barriers were. So the first thing that we did is we had a group of district leadership go to the county MTSS Summer Institute. We realized that this was next steps for us, and so we went ahead and applied for the cohort 2 application and developed a broader district team that included counselors, psychologists, special ed, we had teachers on board, and district leadership. Went to the training, developed our vision statement for MTSS, and in that recognized that although we'd had PBIS and RTI pretty extensively over the last 10 years, that the barriers were that we were really getting stuck in the tiers, the definition of tiers and trying to communicate with people. So and labeling children, where were they in a tier, instead of having real fluid of assessments, really overall lack of overall assessment of students. And so we needed to move forward. And we recognized that we could build upon the PBIS and RTI, which is what we did in our school leadership teams with our leadership, kind of pumping it up with an MTSS focus, but that the piece that was clearly missing was UDL. So in our task force and with our leadership, we decided to move forward with UDL. And that's when my dynamic partner, Lori, took over and really looked at what could we do with UDL. And so Lori, I'm gonna let you talk about all the PD and what we've done with UDL at this point.
Yeah, so scroll down a little bit, Tricia, on the document.
All righty.
So when we started with UDL, we first started, we worked with Pam and Rhonda at OCDE, and we had a team of teachers. We have 16 schools, so we had a team of teachers, 2 teachers for each school site, go through some extensive training, multi-day training with Pam and Rhonda to become our UDL experts. And then what they did was they developed just a 3-hour overview training for all of our teachers, because at that point, no one knew what UDL was. People connected it to just being a special education initiative. So we had a 3-hour overview training that was very well done, very consistent site to site. It was given by the 2 trainers from each site, but it was really designed in collaboration with Pam and Rhonda to give the main points of UDL, just like a little teaser, just the overview, some of the basics of UDL. And then after we did that rollout, then we had a district-wide, we decided to start with middle school. So we had a district-wide PD day where we took and broke apart the 3 principles of UDL, and we did technology training, kind of integrated how can you use educational technology to increase engagement or to use multiple means of representation. So we had training, some more extensive training for our middle schools, and then by option, training for elementary, but we didn't dive in with elementary at that point. And then where we have school leadership teams, as most of you probably do in your schools. So we have school leadership teams, but what we do is we bring the school leadership teams together for training a couple of times a year. So we actually, we split our district, our 16 schools, up into groups of like 3 to 4. Their leadership teams come together and we provide professional development. So what we did was we focused it around UDL. So we got the leadership teams really moving forward with UDL. And then we used UDL as the lens for them to actually look at their site and decide what were the barriers to implementing UDL at your site. What were your next steps? So we had everyone find an entry point. So maybe they just picked one principle, or they had one smaller goal. Like one of our schools did a book study with Katie Novak's book. One of our schools really focused just on engagement. One of our schools focused on behavior and how they could remove barriers in their PBIS system. So everyone picked whatever their entry point was based on the needs of their schools. We have about 77% unduplicated count, and but we have schools that are, really like our title schools that are high low income population, and then we have schools that are 10% low income. So we have really diverse needs. We have some specialty schools. So each school needed to pick their own path with the initiative. And so we spent this whole entire year, Rhonda and Pam came out and facilitated our school leadership teams where they did professional development on UDL, a little bit of professional development, and then a little bit of really structured collaboration time where schools could make an action plan and look at what the barriers were for their site. And it was really successful. So we had 3 days throughout the year where this whole school leadership team came together for professional development with Pam and Rhonda, which are, from our county office. And so, our next steps, we still need a lot more professional development. Obviously, it's a multi-year. People can get lost in it. So, we had a lot of pushback with some of our teachers that kind of didn't see the practical side of it. And so, I think there's a lot to do with marketing instead of calling it, like UDL kind of became like a little bit of a bad word in some of our schools. And we had to kind of rebrand it and talk more in the terms of like engagement, representation. We had to really talk about removing barriers. So it became, we kind of broke it down for our schools, because when you just look at UDL and you just look at it as a big package, it was a little overwhelming for a classroom teacher that didn't understand. They either think they're already doing it and they say, I'm already doing all those things, or they say, I'm really overwhelmed by this. This is too much theory. This is too much information. What exactly does this mean for my classroom? So that's been kind of one of our barriers is, finding the right entry point for people. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you so much, Lori and Tricia. I would just encourage everybody on the call, if you have a question, go ahead and put that in the chat. And then at the end, we can circle back. Or if you have a question right now that you want to put in the chat, you can. I will say, as sort of like a third party working with this team, one of the really great things I think that this district has is district leadership and support and flexibility. Lori and Tricia both made it really clear with all of their sites, and as they said, all of their sites are very different, that this was something where the teachers needed to be freed, to think about how to remove barriers for kids. So if a certain scope and sequence of a textbook was a barrier, well, we're trying to teach standards. We're not necessarily implementing a textbook. That was a message over and over again where the district leadership was really trying to free the school sites to think about, how are we really truly helping remove barriers. They spent a lot of time focusing on that and had some really powerful conversations. So I just kind of want to reemphasize the amazing district team and focus, and even aligning this work to LCAP discussions as part of our work near the end of the the SLT cycle before, everything sort of got moved to distance learning. The conversations that they were having were, okay, if these are our LCAP goals, and if we're talking about math, and we're also talking about English learners, we're trying to identify best practices there. And then they started making some of those connections, like, well, actually, that's kind of an engagement issue. And so they started to have those conversations, and it really, I think, was made more impactful by that district leadership piece. So I wanted to just to add that. So thank you so much. As we are moving through and you think of any questions, there are a couple that have come up. If I'm just going to read a couple of them, I can just see we have Fred saying, loved your idea of each school picking their own path. One size doesn't fit all. And then we have a question of, if one of my colleagues can read it, I'm having an issue scrolling. Oh, there we go. Lori, how did you facilitate the way sites chose their way into UDL? Oh, you already responded through the site leadership teams.
Well,
awesome. Did you want to add anything else?
Well, I think one of the other things is that we really worked on fortifying the PBIS framework and the RTI framework. So that kind of gave them a familiar place to start, so that when we looked at the needs assessment, it was easier to talk about barriers. And I think, Pam, to your credit as well, you kept trying to change the language to barriers, so that you're addressing barriers instead of addressing tiers. Tiers of support didn't seem to be able to motivate people, but barriers, when they talked about what are some of those things, kids that are impeding their learning or impeding their access. So that was really the change of language to barriers, and then starting with the familiar. If you have any of those, you've been doing RTI, I'm sure, for years, and many districts are doing PBIS. We started with the familiar, built on that, and said, okay, so how would you add that universal support with UDL? And then having the trainers, and our principal, C. Katie Novak, of course, is a big kick in the pants. And many of our principals continue to watch Katie's webinars and George Kuros's webinars, and are inspired by that. And so that's kept it going too.
Thank you so much for adding that, Tricia. So again, we had Lori and Tricia here for Westminster. If a couple of you jumped on late from another call, which is totally fine. This is being recorded, so you can go back and hear what their thoughts were on their journey in implementing UDL. So it's actually a great transition to what Rhonda is going to talk about next, and she's going to connect a little bit to what we discussed in January related to barriers and some of our own network needs that we've talked about. So Rhonda, take it away.
Thank you, Pam. Yes, so this actually is a perfect segue to springboard off of Lori and Tricia's great share out of what they have been doing with their implementation plan of UDL. So during our January meeting, we surveyed all of the participants that were on the call during that meeting. And we just wanted to get some information around what is happening either at your county office or at your school district or at your school site, because as our network members are growing, we are seeing great representation of all those different levels of the system. So it's wonderful to see. And this information from that survey is powerful for us, the UDL network leads that are facilitating these conversations, so that we can then provide the best information for you. So during that meeting, we surveyed participants to get an understanding of UDL implementation throughout the state. And as I mentioned, this helps us, the members of the UDL Coalition Steering Committee, so that we can provide that information and resources and best practices based on your needs. So just one of the questions that we asked was that, how would you describe UDL implementation either at your school site, your school district, or within your county? So as you can see on the lovely pie chart right there, that the majority of the individuals responded that they are in the laying the foundation stage. And that is a perfect place to be, because in that laying the foundation stage, this is where we learn the options of UDL specifically, that practice, and then we determine what practice we're going to choose, and then how we're going to go about it. So it's kind of that exploration stage. And then you can see that about 23% were in the installing stage. So if you remember, people in this stage, or a program or a practice in this stage, we're preparing the people, we're preparing the system. So this is where that training is involved, that professional learning. And then 9% were in the implementing stage. This is where people are really trying out that practice. So they're taking the information they learned in the professional learning, and then they're trying it out. They're reflecting on what they've learned. They're reflecting on the system. They're reflecting on ways that they can improve it to be able to move forward. And of course, that ultimate goal would be that sustainability stage. And then another question that we asked was regarding the implementation steps. So as you are, or as you've gone through this implementation of UDL, what are some of the things that you felt were most powerful to implement UDL within your school district or your county? So some of the common things that came out from the responses was definitely buy-in. It's so important to develop that buy-in, and that involves deepening that understanding, making sure everybody is aware. And then we're also addressing the why for UDL. Why do we need to do this? And really tapping into that. That helps people to buy in or to be involved in the process. Another one was to develop that long-range plan. And our colleagues at the Westminster School District, Tricia and Lori, did articulate that, the importance of that intentional long-range plan. It's nothing that we're just gonna, it's not a drive-by, we're just doing it very quickly, but there's some thought to that. And professional learning, of course, is involved in that. So a variety of experts are involved in that. So who can you tap into to provide that professional learning? Is it your county office? Is it people at your district or at your school site, those experts that are building their capacity and their awareness? And then of course that ongoing professional learning. So we're coming back to it. It's not just that one and done. And then how is coaching involved in that to be able to support that professional learning? And then an additional question that we asked were, what are the barriers as you are implementing UDL? So one of the barriers that people articulated was that there's a misunderstanding of what UDL is. People are not sure who this is for. A lot of individuals are under the misunderstanding that it's only for special education students, and this is not true. UDL is for all. And then when we're talking about a misunderstanding of UDL, it's also that, why do we need to do this? So again, tapping back into that why. Individuals also mentioned that money, of course, is an issue, not just paying for an expert to come out and facilitate a professional learning opportunity, but also the release time that it takes for educators to be out of the classroom to attend a professional development day, or that that opportunity to dialogue together and work together as a school leadership team, or even as a grade level team. And then time was another issue. So a lot of individuals are confused as, oh, this is one more thing that we need to do. So we need to overcome that mentality that it's not just another initiative. And as Tricia and Lori identified, that it's so important that that falls underneath that California MTSS umbrella. And then finally, the last question is, how can the California UDL Network help you? So what support do you need? So a lot of individuals really stress the importance of determining, what does an implementation plan look like? So we were happy to share Westminster's implementation plan and their process with that. So we will continue to share those and to be able to support all of our members throughout the state that are implementing UDL. Because it's so important to network with others to hear what's happening out there in real life with teachers in the classroom, at the school site, with students. And then also the resources that are out there. What strategies? How about sample lesson plans? What does UDL look like in the classroom? So that's what a lot of people are asking for, to be able to continue to share the things that are happening throughout the state, to remove the barriers to learning for students, and therefore the ultimate goal would be to create that equitable environment where all students can succeed. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, James McKenna, and he's going to share some information specific to barriers for teachers.
Thanks, Rhonda. For those who don't know me, I'm James McKenna. I work at the Los Angeles County Office of Ed, and I've had the pleasure of going up and down the state, giving UDL boot camps and talks for the past several years. And so can we go to the next slide, please? Starting last year, after doing some boot camps with the Supporting Inclusive Practices folks, and I know Kristen Brooks is on the call, we talked about, well, in the feedback form, how do we start getting their input? Not only what did they think about the training, but where do they anticipate barriers to their implementation? So that's something I thought was great, and we developed some questions, and I've been adding it to all my boot camps since, and asking teachers in different districts about where they see barriers. So far, we polled over 200 teachers, and we had come up with these 5 buckets of barriers, as well as we had an other option where people could suggest it. And so we asked the teachers, looking at time to lesson plan, do you think that's not a problem or a big problem? We had a 5-point Likert scale, and we just asked them to rate those and see, to help, we could share that with administrators and ourselves to think about future trainings and resources and how, or even tweaking that training to make sure that it was more effective and help people to see ways past these barriers. So next slide. Okay, so bear with me with this. Rather than give you an average, I wanted to show you what the distribution looked like as far as how people perceive the barriers to this. And it's what we had an other option where people could suggest, something that they didn't see, but for the most part, all those comments pretty much fell under one of these 5 buckets. So you can see that, some people, there's pretty much identified barriers, people looking at all of these as barriers to their implementation. So what we wanted to do is, share this with you as a perception, as a sampling of what teachers are thinking, looking back after spending 2 days, really diving into what UDL is, and even going through a lesson planning process and looking at rubrics and talking about things that when they were going back, this is what they thought they were going to be, was going to be a challenge for their implementation. So thinking about these, for those of you that are looking that are implementing now or looking to implement, we want to have you start thinking about these barriers and, using this to anticipate barriers and address them ahead of time, rather than find out later on that your teachers felt this way and now you have to react to it, because UDL is all about being proactive rather than reactive. So next slide, please. What I want you to do is Pam is gonna break you out into breakout groups, 4 or 5, okay? And you're gonna pick one of these 5 barriers, and don't worry about memorizing them, because Pam's gonna message each group with a chat with these 5 barriers on them. But you can take a look at them. So we've got time to lesson plan, time to collaborate, support from administration, support from each other, and coaching and ongoing professional development. You're going to pick one of those and discuss, okay, if that's the barrier, what could we do about it? What supports might, a district or school provide that would help alleviate that barrier? Okay. And then we're going to have you come back, and one of you in your group should be prepared to then put a response in the chat, and we'll have some details on a slide when you come back. But basically, you're going to have this conversation, and one of you is going to, when we come back, share who was in your group, what the barrier you chose to focus on, and what you think people could do about it. Okay? And with that, Pam's going to break you into groups.
Yes, so if you are new, if you're new to Zoom breakout sessions, you're going to get a prompt in a minute to join a session. And then you'll go there and you will be able to chat with your colleagues. Sometimes if you have a mic issue or something, so you can still communicate like this, or you can chat with one another. I'll push out a 2-minute warning when you've got about 2 minutes left. You'll probably be with each other about 6 or 7 minutes. There'll be about 4 or 5 people in your group. If you have any problems that come up, you can message me from your chat room, your breakout session room, and you can also leave your session to come back to the main room if you had a different question as well, or maybe you were in the wrong group or something. But these are random groups so that you can just talk about these 5 things. As soon as I break you into your rooms, I will go ahead and send this prompt in there as well so that you have that reminder of what your task is. So I'm just going to get that going here. Oops, hang on a second.
If I can just add that we do want to make sure while you're in your breakout room to determine somebody that's going to capture some common themes. And then when we come back together as a whole group, that one person would be able to chat that out when we ask you to do that. So when you get in your group, determine one person that's going to be the note taker.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and send your message now. Okay, good. Looks like most people are in their rooms. I'm going to go ahead and send the message in a minute. There's apparently a limit on characters, so I'm just having to shorten this up. Rhonda or James, could one of you tell me, I've got time to lesson plan, time to collaborate, support from admin. I'm missing 2 barriers.
Support from colleagues.
Okay.
And coaching and professional development.
Time to lesson plan, time to collaborate, support from admin, colleagues. Okay. Did we start this like 2 minutes ago? Okay, so I think in 5 minutes, I'll give them a 2-minute warning. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
That sounds good.
Yeah, give them time to talk and network a little bit.
555.
That's great. And give some of these other folks that probably, had to step away for a minute and come back and, oh, I can join a group.
I know, that's my life. Literally, as we're about to do breakouts, my daughter comes in. I'm like, get out.
Get out.
No, I have to put people in breakout rooms. Okay, I'm just going to make sure everyone, it looks like everyone has somebody in their room. Oh, good. The ones that have only a couple people in there, it's like 1 person with Sung and 1 person with Fred.
Nice.
So that's good. And then breakout room 13 is empty. That's 3 of our people that are not present at the moment, which is cool. So everyone's got some people.
So funny, like we're all used to having like our little offices or our conference rooms, and now we're all have to, even though like we're in the privacy of our own homes. Well, my wife's right next to me working on her stuff. As if she'd been on a meeting downstairs.
That was great, Rhonda and James, by the way.
What's that?
That was great, you guys. Your pieces.
Well, I so appreciate Lori and Trisha's share out.
Yeah, that was great. That was great.
Just
Yeah.
the reality of what's happening.
They've done a lot of work. Okay, let's
One of
see.
the reasons I have a virtual background is because otherwise you'd see the painting of the poop emoji that my brother-in-law did for my son. Right there.
There's a poop emoji. Okay, so a couple minutes.
Nice.
Oops, what's happening? What's happening? Go back to there. Oh, looks like someone joined a breakout.
Very good.
Or just left the meeting.
Yeah. Or there's that.
Or just that.
Yeah, at one point we had, oh, Molly's joining. We had, oh, I probably should pause, right?
Got a couple rooms finishing up. I'm going to share my screen, get that slide on there. Okay.
All right, everybody. So again, one person from your group should post in the chat, you know, who's in your group, or if you want to be anonymous, you know, me plus those who shall not be named. What barrier you focused on, and there's the barriers again: lesson planning, collaboration, support from admins and coaches, colleagues, and coaching and PD. And then what idea, what strategy do you have to potentially mitigate the barrier? Okay, so let's take some time and pop that in the chat. Okay, so we're seeing, I've got one talking about time constraints. So you could put lesson planning or collaboration, thinking about the distance learning. So we've got more flexible for PD, I guess, and also thinking about planning. That's a conversation we're having a lot in our county office about how to help folks reimagine what design looks like now that their traditional model of pedagogy has been severely altered. Coaching and PD, using small group coaching over Zoom. Thank you, Butte County and the rest. Getting support from admins, tying it to a familiar initiative. So, you know, finding that gateway point. Stay away from new lingo. So not making it jargon heavy and making it accessible to people. Awesome. Some great ideas here. And again, this is all be in the chat. So you can always save the chat log, and we'll save the chat log so that people can go back and look over these different ideas. Because that's the power that this network can have, is we have the opportunity to all learn from each other. All right, and with that, we're going to move into the end section of this meeting and talk about where you can find resources and some upcoming events, both in California and then online and in the East Coast. So first up, I had the great pleasure of partnering with Sung Park from Santa Clara, and he's on the call, as well as Kelly Wiley. I'm not sure if she's on, but we were invited by the CDE and some of our partners in the coalition up there to present about UDL and a distance learning environment. And so that is available for people to look at, and I'm gonna copy and paste that into the chat. And so you can go online and look at this. It was I think we were slated for an hour. I think we did 45 minutes and just talked about what is UDL, and then thinking about how do we start looking at that. What could it look like in a distance learning environment? And there's also, with that, there's a Padlet that we put together for people to start wrapping their heads around. It may be something that you guys, oh, well, I already know this stuff because I'm my UDL person, but it may be something that you find valuable to share with your schools and your district leaders and your teacher leaders about some good first steps. Because one of the things we really try to do is start with a foundational understanding of what UDL is and what it's not, and clear up some misconceptions like that. I do this already, or UDL is just good teaching, and things like that. And thanks for bringing up the Padlet. So this is the Padlet we put. You can see the slides as well as some resources, and we try to give people options so they can read about UDL, they can listen to podcasts, they can watch some videos, and then we have links for further learning, including the learning design platform, links to CAST, and so that is all about that event. Okay, if I believe, Fred, you're going to talk about the International Summit?
Sure. Okay, so sorry, my phone just decided to ring. So some of you may have already known about the fact that the summit was canceled for April due to the coronavirus. But it's great that they are taking the initiative to try and present this virtually. So the event is still taking place. It's the week of June 1st through the 5th. The link below will take you to the website where you can get information about the event and what some of the presentations will be asynchronous and some synchronous. So there'll be a combination of both. I think James and Sung might be presenting. I'm presenting a live broadcast on the LiveBinder. So it should be a great event, because this is our reality right now, is that we are in a virtual world with the way we can work with one another. So I'm really excited to be part of this, and I hope that you can join as well. But as I said, go to the website and you'll be able to get more information. They're really taking a lot of, looking at this in lots of different ways to for us. And then the resources will be available for a few months afterwards so that you have access to those. So maybe the next slide. And Rhonda, I think you're talking about this.
And to continue our professional learning journey, the California MTSS Professional Learning Institute, we are still planning for an in-person event. Of course, we are on hold with any formal decision until we get direct directions from our state regarding that. But the Professional Learning Institute is still scheduled for July 28th, 29th, and 30th in Anaheim, California. So you can see the link to the PLI website is listed right there on the slide that you can see. So check it out, see the keynote speakers that we already have secured. As far as our breakout sessions that we have scheduled, we have a wonderful representation that not only represent UDL, a UDL strand throughout, of course, but then every domain of the California MTSS framework and the School Conditions and Climate Work Group framework that has also been issued to be able to make sure we're creating those equitable learning environments. This year, the Professional Learning Institute is really focusing on what information and resources can we get in the hands of practitioners. So the individuals, teachers, school psychologists, school counselors, administrators, everybody, boots on the ground that need that information to support their students.
Awesome. And another event that is still scheduled for in-person, and they've got updates on their website, is the CAST UDL Symposium in Cambridge, Mass. So they hold it every year, the past few years at the Harvard Law School in Cambridge. And so, or as a Boston native, we call it Harvard. So you can go there. It's a fantastic event. CAST, if you don't know, they just got awarded the EWE grant for special education from the state. So they're going to be doing a lot more work around promoting literacy and UDL in California. But it's a fantastic event to learn more about UDL, some nuances here, thought leaders from across the country and around the world that come in for this event. So check that out.
Okay, so I'm not blowing my own horn here, but I just wanted to, if you were on our last meeting in January, I did a little presentation on the UDL toolkit. And so Live Binders, I'm work with them quite a bit, and they are starting a new series of podcasts called Organize for Success, Organize Success Podcast. And so they interviewed me a couple months ago and wanted to just pick my brain all about UDL. So next Monday, I believe the podcast is going to be released. As far as I know, is you can view it on my Live Binder, which I think you have the link. The link is in our resources as well. So anyway, kind of fun. We're spreading the word. Live Binder developers, Tina Schneider and Barbara Talent, are very excited about UDL work. And so hopefully you'll get a chance to listen to it and give me some feedback. Okay, chat. So we've been trying to monitor the as we go today, and we've got a lot of nice comments. Blow your horn, Fred. That's fine. Okay, but is there anything coming to mind right now, or things that you're thinking of? Because we've had I think a great dialogue today, and it just feels great to me just to be with everyone today. So maybe I'll ask my colleagues to join in on this.
I haven't seen any unanswered questions, but a lot of great ideas, that just kept pouring in. Again, if you should be able to save the chat log, and then everybody can go back and look at the ideas that came from different folks, and looking at, again, having the admins and common messaging around UDL and making it a priority. So key to have the administrators involved. Too often we've seen, well-meaning folks who think professional development or implementation starts and stops with send all the teachers to training. So, really having that admin involvement and ownership is great. And so there's lots of ideas up there. So make sure you save the chat, and we'll save it as well. Any other comments from Pam, Rhonda?
No, I think that really sums it up nicely. We definitely will save the chat and put it in our folder. I'm just going to advance the slide because closing. Our meeting dates, as Rhonda mentioned earlier, are to be determined. In about a week, our steering committee is getting together to talk about next year, and we'll be sending out those dates once those are confirmed. And feel free to invite your colleagues. Again, this is a really open space for all of us. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because I think that's the end of our slides. Oh, no, apparently I'm still sharing. Oh, am I sharing? Am I not sharing? Okay, I'm not sharing. So we're just really excited for all of you that we're here. We are really seeing an emergence of people interested in UDL with distance learning. So that was one of the reasons why Sung and Kelly and James worked with CDE to put together that resource. And we're only going to continue to see more of that. So this is going to be a cool place for us to dialogue and share ideas next year about platforms, technologies. I know our office has a project working where we're trying to gather some of those together. So all of these things we can share with one another and continue to support each other as we enter this this uncharted territory where we are really being pushed to think outside the box, and UDL is being brought right alongside with all of that. So it's really cool. Any other some questions here in the chat. How do we know if we are on the email list? If you got the email about today, you definitely were. If you're, we have some people, Rhonda, are you seeing the people posting their emails in the chat? If you don't know if you were on that email list, post your name in the chat, and Rhonda will add you to our list so that you guys get those updates. Any other final comments from James or Fred or Rhonda before we close?
I just have one thing that I'd like to share, and many of you are probably doing this as well, but we're going through this new way of sharing information with our districts in our county, and so we're coming up with different ways to do like 2-hour UDL modules to share and have them available in morning and afternoon because of sub situations. So we're developing this right now, and I'm happy to share what we come up with. It'll probably be on the live binder as well as some tools to just kind of rethink or think differently about how we engage, because engagement is part of the issue, right? Of our calls and when we're together. Today felt very engaging, but we're thinking of lots of different ways to encourage audience and participation. So if you come up with ideas, please share them with us, because we're working at this together. We want to help each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fred. All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day. We're ending 5 minutes early. How awesome is that? That like never happens in Zoom world. So thank you guys so much. Have an awesome day. Please reach out to any of us if you have any questions or any trouble getting the Google folder or the slides. But thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.